HQ presented by Capital One. I'm Chris Hassel. We had the very first college football playoff rankings come out this week. Take a look at the numbers by these teams. Do you notice something?
What?
Well, it doesn't match up with the college football playoff rankings, right? So what we have here is how the 12-team playoff model would look right now if it was in place this season and everything ended right now. Those 4 teams that get byes, those are the 4 highest-ranked conference champions. Tennessee, number 1 in the playoff poll, so we have them winning the SEC over the Georgias and the Alabamas. That's why they would have to play in the very first round. You even see that Tulane logo there at number 12. Tulane would be the highest-ranked group of 5 team conference champion and get the automatic bid. Why are we doing this? Because we're going to bring Tom Fornelli in here, and he's going to help us go through this hypothetical 12-team playoff right now. Tom, first off, where are we at as it pertains to implementing this new playoff, and how do you think it would look as of now?
Well, I mean, I think it's an inevitability at this point. There's been so much talk about it that it's hard to imagine that we won't have a 12-team playoff here in the next few years, which I think will be good for the television networks. It'll be good for the schools in that it'll bring in more money. I'm not sure it'll be great for the sport overall. I think that it will introduce more appealing games, I guess you could say, in November. But I also think that this is a sport that in recent years has become too dependent on college football playoff. If you look at the way fans react to things now, if you're not a playoff team, you stink. And I think that if you expand the playoff field, yes, it will give more parity to teams to be able to at least reach the playoff. But it's not going to change anything as far as I'm concerned about who's eligible to win the college football playoff. So for me, don't get me wrong. When we go to 12, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy all these games. Just looking at these projected matchups that we have right now, there's a whole lot of exciting games that I think I would be happy to watch. But there's also a part of me that wonders if in the long run, teams that maybe in fan bases that used to end their seasons with exciting bowl wins against other big teams get tired of ending their season with a loss every year.
Like in college basketball, where basically if you don't end your season with a loss, that means you won the national championship game. But here we go. Let's go through it. You saw on the graphic there that the first round games are likely to be played on campus, and I think that's going to be maybe the best thing about this new college football playoff is that we get on-campus games in the postseason. So let's look at those first-round games and take us through them with Oregon, Georgia, Bama, and Michigan all hosting games.
Yeah, I look at this 8-9 game between Oregon and USC, which could, be our Pac-12 championship game this year, the way things are breaking down. And to me, this is a lot like the 8-9 seed game in the NCAA tournament, in that I feel like this is a coin flip because these are two very similar teams in that offensively, they're both explosive. USC does it more in the air while Oregon's more focused on the ground, but they both score points in a hurry, and they both feature defenses that love to give up points in a hurry. So I think this would be the most exciting game of the first round. And in my quote-unquote simulation here, I'm giving the edge to USC simply because Lincoln Riley's been in the playoff multiple times. This is Dan Lanning's first year at Oregon. It'd be his first year in a playoff game, obviously. So I give USC a slight edge in coaching there, so I'm going with the Trojans. In the second game, I did not have to spend a whole lot of time thinking this one over. I love Tulane. They're having a great season, but come on, Georgia's winning this game by at least 40 before it gets ready to move on. We got Alabama and LSU. Again, we're going to see this one on Saturday night, but I think that much like what we're going to see on Saturday night, LSU's having a very good season. I think that they have been a pleasant surprise, at least compared to what I expected from them going into the year and what we saw from them in that opening game against Florida State. Now, they've got some problems on special teams, but still, they're a good team. They're just not as good as Alabama, so I think that Alabama is going to win that matchup to move on. And in the final game, Michigan and Ole Miss, I guess, obviously Tulane aside, of the 12 teams in this playoff, Ole Miss would be the one I deem the most fraudulent. I really don't think it's a very good team. I think it's got a good record. I don't think it's played anybody or beaten anybody of note that's worth monitoring. So I look at this matchup against Michigan. I think this is another blowout, which is not what you usually see for Big Ten versus the SEC in the postseason. But I think the Wolverines would win this one big and move on.
Okay, our mock 12-team playoff is now down to 8. Now we have that true bracket, and we move into more bowl-like atmospheres. I do hope that eventually we get to the point where every team can play a home game. I would love to see this round on college campuses as well. But this is where we see those 4 teams that had byes go up against the teams that you had winning in that opening round. So take us through it, beginning with Tennessee hosting USC.
Yeah, this would be another exciting game, kind of like what we talked about with USC and Oregon a minute ago, which I would expect there to be a lot of points scored. But the difference is Tennessee's defense actually isn't terrible. Like, if you look at them, they have trouble stopping the pass, but they're very good at taking away the run, and I think that would just give them an edge in this one. And I don't think USC, as potent as it is offensively, would be able to keep pace with the Vols' offense because they just score a ton of points, and USC would not be able to stop them. So I think this would be a closer game. Like, I don't know what the spread would be. I would probably take the spread with the Trojans, but I would take Tennessee to move on. In our other game with Georgia TCU, again, TCU, I love you. I think you're one of the most entertaining teams in the country this season. I really enjoy watching you, but one of the reasons you're so entertaining is that your defense is terrible, and it does not allow you to pull away from the teams that you're playing. So I look at this matchup. I think Georgia's going to be able to score as many points as it wants, and I don't know if this TCU offense will be able to put up the kind of points it's going to need to against the best defense it will have seen by far if this is how the thing plays out. So I'm taking Georgia to move on for a rematch of what we're going to see this weekend. And in the next game, Ohio State, Alabama, I mean, come on, you can't really ask for a better matchup than that, let alone getting it in the quarterfinals. But when I look at these two teams, it's possibly two of the best quarterbacks in the country, C.J. Stroud versus Bryce Young. But Ohio State's got better receivers than Alabama does. And I think, honestly, this year, the Buckeyes have a better defense, too. So I'm taking Ohio State in this matchup. And Michigan-Clemson, this is a tough one. I think that these two teams are so similar that this would be a very ugly game. Like, I feel like the first team to 14 points is going to win this one. And I think Michigan's better running the ball. I mean, I think that they're both built around running the ball. I like what Michigan does. I think they have the better offensive line. I think defensively they are both solid. But this is a coin flip. And in this simulation, I've got Michigan winning that coin flip 51 times out of 100. So I'm moving the Wolverines into the Final Four.
And so you have a couple of rematches. Ohio State and Michigan are going to play, as they always do, the last regular season game of the season. We get Tennessee, Georgia this week. That would be in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. So, I mean, Tennessee fans would probably be saying, hey, we're the number 1 team, yet we got to go to Georgia, to Atlanta, and play this game. Play it out for us here in the semis.
Yeah, I think that home field advantage there. I mean, obviously, neutral site, they're going to split the tickets, but we know how that goes when the Dogs are in Atlanta. It's always a Georgia crowd no matter what you do, and I think that would play a huge role here. I think it's a great game. I can't wait to watch it on Saturday. I'll love to watch it in the semifinal if it happens, but I just think Georgia's going to move on in this one. I think it's that defense of theirs that makes the difference because they don't get as much credit for what they do offensively because obviously, when you look at Tennessee, Georgia's not as explosive in the passing attack, but they have a great offensive line. They are a very efficient offense, and they score as many points as they need to, and they can score quite a bunch of them. So I think they would be able to slow down Tennessee and win the game, which is kind of what I'm expecting to happen this week on Saturday. So if I'm expecting it this week, I'm going to take it on a neutral field as well. And then in the Fiesta Bowl, Ohio State, Michigan, listen, Wolverines won last year in this game, but there has not been a whole lot of reasons to think Michigan has beaten Ohio State in recent seasons. This game will be in the Fiesta Bowl, so it won't be snowing like it was last year when the Wolverines beat Ohio State in Ann Arbor. I just don't think the Wolverines have enough offensively to keep pace, so I'm going to move the Buckeyes into the final against the Bulldogs.
Okay, and in this mock, Tom, I guess you can play it wherever you want. You can play it in your own backyard there in Chicago. Where is Georgia, Ohio State going to be played? Please tell me we're not playing on the Soldier Field turf.
No, let's play it in the Bahamas Bowl. I just feel like let's give everybody a nice little vacation to the islands. No, it's going to be it'll be sunny and warm instead of, somewhere indoors where the fans got to sit and freeze as they're waiting to get into the stadium. But I no matter where you play it, I think Ohio State's the best team in the country this year. I really do. I know that if you look at their resume right now, it's hard to put them at number 1 because of it, because Tennessee's got bigger wins, Georgia's got a bigger win. But Ohio State had a nice win against Penn State this weekend, and I think that no matter who you put in front of it, they're going to beat them this year because offensively, there's nothing you can do to stop this team. We talk about the Tennessee offense all we want, but Ohio State's offense is no different. They could put points up on anybody. There are no matchups that you can win, and Georgia has a great secondary, but you can't match up because we've seen it. They lost Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave to the NFL. First game of the season, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is supposed to be the best receiver in the country, has a hamstring injury. He's hardly played. So what do? They replace him with Marvin Harrison Jr., who, oh, wow, look at him. He's now the best wide receiver in the country. That's just very difficult for any team to match up with. So I think Georgia could, quote, slow them down, but Georgia wouldn't be able to keep up. And on the other side of the ball, that Ohio State defense, it's just as good as Georgia's this year. If you look at all the advanced metrics and the basic numbers, they are doing an outstanding job. I think the Buckeyes win this one, and they are your national champion for 2023 in our mock playoff here.
Yeah, some do mock drafts. Tom Fornelli does mock college football playoffs, and this one is a 12-teamer, which we hope to get in the next couple of years. Tom, thank you so much, crowning the Ohio State Buckeyes as his mock champions. In the latest Cover 3 podcast, you can hear Tom Fornelli and many more on the Cover 3, really diving into the two huge SEC showdowns this week, Georgia, Tennessee, Bama, LSU, and specifically how Georgia's injury news this week impacts that matchup.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.